Today on the Mind Body Beauty Show, I talk with Jacqui Kirkland from Grateful Harvest all about gut health and how that affects our skin. Hey everyone, welcome to Mind Body Beauty, helping you feel happier in your own skin. I'm Crystal, creator of Ecology Skincare, and today I have with me Jacqui Kirkland from Grateful Harvest.
Hello.
Welcome, Jacqui.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and sharing your experience with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure.
Now, Jacqui, she's an artisan crafter and supplier of fermented products, and she is passionate about helping people make that connection between their gut health and what's going on in the mind and the body. And also our gut health is really intricately connected with what's happening with our skin health as well. So Jacqui, we're only 10% human. We've got over 100 trillion microbes hanging out in the gut that outnumber our human cells by 10 to 1. So what's going on there? How did they get there?
It's a fascinating topic. It's relatively new science that's creating quite a buzz right across the science circles. Up until relatively recently, we were looking at bugs as being the enemy, but as it turns out, they're actually our friends, not our foe. Inside of our systems, in fact, even on our skin and our hair and our mouths, we have microbes, bacteria, yeast, fungi, all throughout our system. The vast majority of them are actually housed within our gut. So our large colon contains anywhere from 1.5 to 2 kilos of bacteria by weight.
Oh, right.
I know, it's quite extreme, it seems. My goodness. And I can't begin to tell you the number of jokes I've heard where some people think they have a lot more than 1.5 to 2 kilos in there, which is, because there's variation, of course, as well. So these bacteria, when we're born, we're actually born with a sterile gut. And as we're being born into the world, coming through the birth canal, we actually get inoculated with our first round of bacteria from our mother. And that bacteria has come from both our father and our mother. And as we are fed during those first 3 years of life, we're drinking breast milk that contains bacteria as well. And of course, as we are handed around from family members, as we put things in our mouth, all of that is seeing us actually, in effect, seeding the microbiome that exists within us. Fascinating and a very exciting area of science that is newly emerging. So
yeah. And there's and you alluded to it then when you're saying, in that first 3 years of life, we get passed around, we put things in our mouth.
Yep.
There's a lot of research to suggest that 70 to 80% of our immune system is also housed in the gut.
That's correct, yeah.
So what's the interaction between the gut flora and our immune system?
It's incredibly interlinked. It's not just an association, the two are really embedded. In fact, the lymphatic tissue that surrounds our gut is where we say up to 80% of the immune system is housed. So that means that as our system is priming itself, as it's learning, so those first 12 months in particular, but up to 3 years of life, our body is coming into contact with the outside world, not just through our skin, but with our internal skin. And that's actually teaching our immune system what's friend and what's foe and what it needs to raise an army, if you like, against, and what it needs to allow to be entered into this beautiful new system so that the body can actually absorb the food and benefit from. So that whole thing is going on in that system in those first three years of life. It's quite something. So and continues to go on throughout our life. So as we develop and we age, that immune system is always there, primed, ready to go. And depending on what environment we put our system in, so both the internal environment that we live in, but the internal environment will actually affect how that immune system responds to us as well. So it's quite exciting.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and obviously that external environment as well has a big impact on the gut flora and its diversity.
Absolutely.
And its function. So we've got the bacteria, the fungi, the yeast, and all that living in the gut. How does that gut flora actually impact the rest of the body and our immune system and, you know, our blood sugar levels or our body fat or our mood and our anxiety? Like how does that happen?
So the science is still very new, and we just need to be really careful that people understand that. But what it is actually indicating is that on every level it's impacting. So within the microbiome, you have certain species that will dominate, and you create the environment that allows different species to dominate. So in a really healthy, robust person, you will have a really good variety of microbes living in there, but you will also get some dominating more than others, and depending on what we consume will feed that particular strain. So certain things like fermented foods, for instance, when we eat those, we know, well, we think, and we have to be really careful here because the science is so new, but we think what's going on there is that the bacteria that are present and some of the organic acids, they actually help create an environment that gets rid of the bad guys and leaves it clear for the new bacteria, well, for the good bacteria that are present in and around us to start to populate. So if you create an environment through wrong diet choice, through not drinking well, water, being dehydrated, through not sleeping well, not managing your stress, you create that sort of environment, it will favour certain microbes. A lot of people are now familiar with Candida albicans, or yeast, as it's often referred to. That will often proliferate and go from being a normal resident of the gut to actually overtaking the whole system and causing all sorts of problems. So, you know, these things, how the immune system then copes with that, again, is dependent upon what the environment that we're creating. Keeping it really simple. I'm not a doctor. I'm a concerned citizen, and I've done a lot of reading and talked to a lot of world experts. And for me, it's about keeping it really simple, telling people to go and see the people they need to, like the experts. But what we're doing here today is making you aware that, oh my goodness, within you there is this microbiome. If your guts are telling you that something's not quite right, well, I'd be listening to them, because they are communicating with your brain all the time. There are more neurons in your gut than there are in your brain. There's a vagus nerve that runs from your gut to your brain, and it's communicating more towards your brain than the other way coming. So there's all this information flowing, and it's not just your cells that are communicating, it's the cells of your bacteria as well that are actually producing, in some cases, they're helping produce serotonin and other feel-good hormones, which then have an immediate impact on how we feel. So creating the environment that favours those sorts of bugs, really important. If you start to feel terrible, you know, perhaps looking at what's going on inside your gut could be a really good starting point. Something as simple as getting more sleep, eating more plants, crowding out the bad guys so that the good guys can proliferate is a really good idea.
And so are there certain types of plants that we can eat that will help the more beneficial microbes grow, that will actually feed them?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So here's something that we have to all keep in mind, is that each of us is unique. So you and I are sitting here having this conversation, and the plants that are going to benefit me are actually going to be quite different to the plants that benefit you, because you have a different ecosystem. Your immune system was primed differently as a child to mine. I know you have food sensitivities, whereas I don't. So therefore, you have to be really careful to tailor to your system what it is that your body can tolerate. Our immune system, when it was built when we were early, it now sort of presets the mode of what's going to happen as we go throughout life. We also have genes, a genetic predisposition for things. Now, the fascinating things about genes is that they don't determine whether or not you're going to get a disease, but you create an environment, and the environment and also bugs, microbes, can turn on and off these genes. So what becomes really important is, okay, we know we might have a gene that may not be great for us, but we can contain that by containing our environment. It's a fascinating bit of science that's growing alongside this whole science of the microbiome, is the impact of the DNA that comes from our microbes as well. So you just quoted 10% human, 10% human cells, 90% bacteria. I've seen another quote that's even more fascinating. If we're looking at DNA, 0.5% human DNA, 99.5% Yeah. Okay, now I really messed with your
Seriously?
head. Yeah.
Wow.
I think I've quoted that right, or it's 5%. Just double check and put it on the footnote at the end. It's fascinating. So this DNA, if you look, for instance, at the human microbiome, when they mapped that, they said, oh, look, exciting, we've got the answer. We know there's 21,000 genes approximately, although that figure is hotly debated as well. And you'll read anything from 17 to 22,000, so nothing is ever as exact as we think it is.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say to people, just be mindful that this is a new emerging science and listen to your own body and work out what's true for you. But if you have a look at that 17 to 21,000 genes, well, there's a water flea that has 31,000 genes, so it's got more genes than us. So does that mean, how do we be so complex? And it's because those we call it the microbiota, that microbiota is contributing genetic material and is controlling, and it's creating things within us that allow our bodies to perform the intricate things that they do. And you remove that microbiota out of our system, and we start to have problems. And we don't know, some of the hypotheses that are coming out of the science area now is that our mucking around with the microbiome over the last 3 or 4 generations is what is creating a lot of these problems that we're seeing, things like, autism and ADHD, autoimmune diseases, and then, your Parkinson's, this full spectrum of disease right across our community would appear to have at least some of its origins in the disruption of the microbiome.
Wow.
So exciting, because it means that we're starting to find answers. We're starting to have options for people who, have been told it's all in your mind, love,
Yeah.
Well, it may have been, but it's come via the gut for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you mentioned that food can have like a very
Absolutely.
beneficial or a very detrimental impact on our gut microbiome. How much sleep we're getting, how much stress we're under. What other things can contribute to?
So good quality water, the types of things that we're eating are definitely a key component. So eating whole foods, eating more plants, and the reason for that is the material that's in plants, the fibre, that actually doesn't feed us, that feeds the microbiome. It keeps those chaps happy, and we want them to be happy, because if they're happy, we're happy too. We've all had that experience about what happens when our system gets upset. So we don't want to upset our system, we want to keep it happy as we go along as well. So doing that, herbs are a great option as well. Incorporating herbs into a diet also assists the body to do the thing. We're really talking about eating whole foods and limiting the impact of the other things in our environment that aren't good for us. So things like the use of antibiotics. Now, there is absolutely a place for an antibiotics. You working with your doctor, work out the best plan. But if the antibiotic is an option, then I always choose not to take an antibiotic. I always use it as a last resort, simply because often the problem that you're addressing can be addressed with rest. Rest and good food and more rest, and we live in a very busy world where a lot of us aren't prepared to take the time to let our body recover, and you need to avoid the use of antibiotics just because you're busy. It's not a good enough reason to do it. So avoid those. Avoid the use of chemicals. Chemicals are problematic as they put an extra load on the system. Both on those can actually indirectly and directly damage your microbiome, can put an extra load on your liver then becomes sluggish, and your liver is part of your digestive system, so then everything gets out of kilter. Then you create an environment that doesn't favour those good bugs, that actually favours other bugs that are actually living in our system. They're meant to be there, but now they get to grow in bigger numbers. So avoiding chemicals, avoiding heavy metals, as much as possible, and of course avoiding stress. Good luck with that one.
Yes.
At least managing it, right?
Yes.
Okay, realistically, this is the world we live in.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that I've seen people is becoming absolute stress heads about what they're going to eat, what are their, and they max out on stress, and stress is as damaging to you as these other problems. So when you find yourself in that circular thinking where it's all becoming overwhelming, learning to breathe is really important, and just keeping everything down and realising that actually it is okay. We can move through these situations. So our bugs are there to help us. So It's in their interest as well. If we're in it together, it's in their interest for us to survive as well.
Yeah, especially if we're just the big human, bag of flesh that carries them all around and keeps them all comfortable and happy and well fed. So now, in what ways do the gut microbiome actually affect our skin health?
Yes, so this is a really interesting area as well.
Yeah.
Having the wrong type of bacteria in your gut, in effect, if you have the good bacteria there, they keep the pathogens away. You have the bad bacteria. This is very simple. Like, there'll be microbiologists out there pulling their hair, but simplistically, you create an environment for the bad bugs. They will come in and inhabit that area. If you have poor movement through the bowel, okay, so you don't have the bugs breaking down that vegetable matter, so now things become a bit sluggish and it gets stuck there. Well, in effect, you've got a pipe, and the pipe can either be nice and clean and free moving, or it can become clogged and over time impacted with material. Now, what can happen is living in that material, it's a really great place for parasites to live. Yeah. And interesting enough, I heard Dr. Karen Phillips speak the other night, and she commented that as a GP, she's seeing a huge number of parasites presenting in the clinic now, more so than ever before.
Wow.
I thought that was fascinating because, once again, when we look at the gut health, impacted material, perfect environment for parasites. And the thing about parasites is they release toxins. Toxins have to go into your liver to be processed. Your liver becomes overworked. The body then starts pushing these toxins out into other areas. So the skin is a natural detoxing pathway for the body. It will, in effect, push the rubbish out through your skin. So you can either get rashes, you can get eczema, and you can get acne and pimples and eruptions, all the body's mechanism to try and clear out stuff as well. So it's challenging.
And there's a really high correlation as well between acne sufferers and constipation.
Yep.
And the research that's been done, it's something as high as 40 or 50% of acne sufferers have constipation. So, immediately you're going to have, people who aren't moving things through the system properly, and then, that's going to start getting pushed out through the skin, causing congestion in the skin as well.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing about constipation is when you see a figure like that, it actually isn't referring to just not being able to go to the toilet. Not being able to stop going to the toilet is the same problem. So some people might be sitting there today going, oh, well, I don't have that problem. I have the opposite problem. Everything just passes through me. But you can get the same issue going on. You can have impacted material and then material just passing through really quickly. So if you have either of constipation or diarrhea, then you're in trouble. You have a dysbiosis in your gut. And you really, it's something that in our busy lifestyle we hear as being normal, but actually it's not normal. And we would be well advised to actually pay attention to it and to take the time that it needs. And that's the thing, it takes time. Beautiful skin, beautiful health doesn't come from buying a quick package and plastering over it. It comes from building good health within. And good health within starts with good gut health, eating well, drinking well, and then building from there. And then it shows on the skin. The skin is able to speak for itself about what's happening inside. So
absolutely, because certainly when we have that variety of beneficial gut bacteria, they're actually metabolizing some of our food and producing essential nutrients that we're then absorbing. Is that right?
That's correct. There are certain things that we actually have, no longer, we can't actually produce for ourselves. There are certain enzymes, there's vitamins, nutrients that we actually cannot break down with our digestive system. We're completely dependent on the bacteria doing that for us. And so if we don't have that bacteria, or we're not providing them with the food source they need, now we're in trouble. I mean, small chain fatty acids are produced by bacteria in the gut, in the large intestine. So if you don't have that going on, then we know that's very important for skin health as well. So if you're wanting a beautiful glow, then
starts in the gut.
It certainly does.
Healthy glow starts in the gut.
It does. There's no shortcutting it either. You will see people thinking that they can shortcut it, and you might get away with something, especially when you're younger. You'll get away with it for a while. but it will catch up with you. You know, the body is incredibly resilient. It wants to come back to a status of balance. You know, everything wants to be in harmony. But you keep abusing it, you keep tipping it, and you won't get away with it forever. There will be a point at which it will go, okay, now we've got to try something else because what we've been doing doesn't work. So, and that's what you see with skin eruptions, you know. That's, you know, the body speaking.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Our skin is our biggest organ of communication, as well as just being our biggest organ.
Yes, maybe, but then the intestine, when you consider how much space the intestine takes up, and this is again this paradigm shift we're having in the scientific community, that up until now, you know, the trick question has been, what's the largest organ in the body? And we all go, the ones that know it, it's the skin. But in actual fact, when you look at you've got two choices. You could include the internal lining of our digestive system as being part of the skin, because of course we're a donut. We've got skin on the outside and in effect skin on the inside. So yes, that argument. But if you consider the digestive system to be an organ in itself, and that's how now people are now starting to talk about the microbiome and that whole process of digestion being an organ in itself, then you would argue that it's even bigger, because of course once you take the lining of the gut out and lay it out, it's as large as a tennis court, football field, depending on who's arguing which side. So
very
it's fascinating. And then that for them to be so closely connected, you know, the gut and the skin, so closely connected like that is quite something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could essentially take, you know, a marker pen and draw from your cheek inside your mouth all the way down out to the butt cheek, and it would be, you wouldn't have to take your pen off the surface of your lining at all.
No, that's it. We're a donut. Hopefully a good one, right? It's quite wonderful, really. So, and understanding that connection empowers us to then start making choices. You know, we currently think about, I've got to be good, but that's actually not what this is about. It's not about doing a particular diet or being good. It's actually about nourishing and nurturing yourself. And once you start to do that, then the beauty comes out with it as well. So
being kind to yourself and being kind to your microbiome.
Absolutely. We're in it together, and each other's as well. So here's the other thing that I think is important for people to understand, is that because we are all so different, even within the one family, what works for you won't necessarily work for the other members of your family. So being really supportive of each other as we work out what does and doesn't work is actually really important. You know, that being kind to yourself and being kind to others really is, it's a great mantra to have, because it will create an environment in which you guys can work out what works for me, you know. And then as we work it out, we start to feel better, and our skin glows as a result of it as well, of course. So, and now where do fermented beverages and fermented foods fit in with this? Okay, so fermented, they have a very long history. So when we look at where these products have come from, they were simply a means of preserving food. Probably happened by dumb luck, I'm guessing, and it is a guess because we don't really know, because although we have ancient records of these foods, we don't really understand. Lots of stories, myths, legends about, you know, gods giving gifts, and so obviously right throughout time we've actually recognised these products as having some intrinsic good about them, that although we mightn't understand where it came from, that we knew they were a benefit from it for us. So we have things like, you know, your kombuchas and your kevirs, and these are products that are beverages that you can drink, and then you have sauerkrauts and kimchis, and these are vegetable components that have been fermented, and then you've got your misos and those soybean type products as well. And so what happens when they're fermented is the bacteria that are present actually break down the food into their more simpler components, and also at the same time recreate other things that aren't originally there in the food. So some things like some vitamins and minerals will in effect be pre-digested for us. So, you know, you may not be able to tolerate something in its unfermented form, but you can tolerate it in its fermented form because it has in effect been broken down. Same thing happens with cooking actually. So depending on how compromised your immune system can be, you know, there's a big move to eat raw and fresh, which is great. But for some people, that'll be really a big problem. They're going to need to eat their food cooked and steamed, and, you know, because if they don't do that, their body can't digest it and you're getting no nutrients. So fermentation works in that whole approach to food. So, you know, for some people, for the majority of people, it's going to be fabulous, but there will be some people within the community for whom fermented foods aren't right for them yet. You know, they either have a histamine intolerance, or they might have FODMAP issues, or they might have SIBO, which is where you have an overgrowth of bacteria in your small intestine, which is not where they should be. They should be in your large intestine, but undigested food in the small intestine, a lack of movement through that area, sees an overgrowth of unwanted bacteria. And then simply eating more fermented foods and even raw foods in these situations can actually be really problematic. It can actually cause this, instead of being healing foods, which for the majority of people they will be, they actually cause the system to flare. So being in tune with yourself, finding a professional doctor or naturopath whom you trust and you can work with is really the key cornerstone to these to good health, simply because it is a collaboration between you, your healthcare professional, and your gut, you know, the microbes, absolutely. You know, and when you guys work it out, when everybody works it out together, it's a really sweet spot, because then life smells like roses.
Rather than the proverbial.
Yeah, that's right, which is how it smells when it's not working right, you know, and we're laughing about it, but it really is no laughing matter for somebody that's actually in that position, because it feels overwhelming.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I've been
you've lived
there.
it, right? Yeah.
And they're you know, in reality, there's a really high correlation between skin issues and people that do have that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Yep.
You know, in one particular study, they found that, you know, it was 10 times more prevalent with people with rosacea, that they actually had that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And then once they corrected that, the symptoms of rosacea went away.
Yep. It's exciting because it does mean that for those people that feel like they've tried everything and, you know, nothing works, there is now an opportunity to explore something else, you know, and it's challenging because it's new and everybody's different, but, you know, you can get there for sure, you know, and have a good quality of life and a beautiful skin as well. So
absolutely. That's what we're all looking for.
Yeah.
Happy life, happy skin.
Absolutely.
And if we treat the gut bacteria right, as you say, you know, if they're producing happy hormones for us, then happy days.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's good.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge and your expertise with us, Jacqui.
Thank you.
Where can we find you? Because you do workshops and events and all kinds of things with fermented products as well.
Yep. So we have a website, gratefulharvest.com.au, and there's an education section there where there'll be the latest options on workshops and events that we're part of listed there as well. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming and sharing with us.
Thanks, Crystal. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Mind, Body, Beauty. If you've liked what you've seen or heard, please like, share, subscribe, and come and find us on ecologyskincare.com. Thank you.